Conversation. A pleasure to welcome to the program a dear friend of mine and the world's, as I've said in the past programs with him. That's John Rafferty, and he's the president of the Secular Humanist Society of New York, and he's an intellectual of a high order, and he's obviously a humanist. And I'd also say at the very outset, he publishes a monthly newsletter, and I'll show you what it looks like. You can just take a quick look, and maybe you can come in on that. It's called Pique, a newsletter of the Secular Humanist Society of New York, and might as well, while we're at it now, also let people have a good look at a book that has now just come out, and which we're going to talk about, which is this. I'll put that up now, and it's called Fit of Pique, Dispatches from the Culture Wars by John Rafferty, and it happens to be at the corner of Church and State Street, as you can see. This is the book. This is the book that is just out now, and there's going to be a book party about that. We're going to let people know about that and other matters. But he's our guest, and John, welcome to Conversations once again. Pleasure.
I'm delighted to be here. Thank you for inviting me back.
Yeah, no, it's my pleasure to be, because reading Pique is one of the Pique experience, P-E-A-K experiences of my life. It's so well written with great humor and insight and so forth. But I wonder, maybe we could, John, we got a whole hour, right? So share just a little bit personal background and how you got into being in the position of understanding, the question of humanism and so forth, and then we can get into the activity and your activity in terms of the the society. But a little of your own background. You're a New Yorker, I guess, huh?
Born and bred in New York, product of the New York City school systems all the way up, even taught in them later on. I gave up on religion at a very early age, traumatic experience, which is not a big deal. But I just didn't pay much attention to religion. It was not an important. I was what my wife calls not a theist or an atheist, but an apatheist.
Apatheist. I haven't heard that. I've heard of agnostic, but I haven't heard of an apatheist.
Apatheists don't care about it one way or the other.
Okay, probably a lot of people like that.
At any rate, I just was not interested in religion. Came the early 90s in America, 20 years ago, and I noticed what was going on. There was suddenly right-wing hatred in the air on talk radio, and there were people taking over, called conservatives, but I don't consider them conservatives. I consider them right-wing ideologues, people who were trying to push religion into government, the Gingrich Revolution of '94. And what really woke me up was one day, on an inside page of the New York Times in the morning, I see a photograph, and there were over 40, there was 42, I think, congressmen and women, including a few senators, who were on the steps of the Capitol honoring the Reverend Sun Myung Moon. A convicted, who was subsequently convicted of tax fraud, a man who considered himself God.
Yes. Unification Church?
And these, the Unification Church. And these were our elected representatives honoring this man. And I thought, what is going on in America? What is happening to my country? So I started paying a little bit more attention, and I heard the then still alive Reverend Falwell and Newt Gingrich and others who were saying that secular humanism was the basis of all the problems in America. It was the reason that there was, for teen pregnancy, high abortion rates, rising crime, rising divorce rates. By the way, all of these were going down in the 90s, but why let facts interfere with a good argument, right?
That's a question.
And their point was that this was all the fault of secularism and secular humanism.
Godless secularism.
Godless secular humanism. I figured I ought to get to know these people. And
had you followed things politically? You followed things intellectually in your life.
I was politically very active as a young man. I had the assassination of Bobby Kennedy, for whom I had worked.
Had you really?
Not in any important position. I was just a peon, but I'd worked in his Senate campaign, and I wrote soapbox speeches in his Senate campaign. We had a system where 3 people would go out, literally with a little milk carton box for one person to stand on and read a speech. Another one would hold a flag, and a third one would pass out literature at subway stops.
Right.
And I was back at the headquarters on 730 Fifth Avenue, writing out 5-minute speeches, 5-minute speeches on anything, whatever, and they were taken and read by these people.
You'd done some advertising work or something,
I was in the ad business most of my adult life.
Okay, right. Okay, good. Yeah, okay.
Okay. And when he was running for president, I just gotten started volunteering, and he was killed, and I got turned off. And
I was in Los Angeles when that happened at the Ambassador Hotel. It was just shocking. After King.
Yeah,
I mean, it was just,
it wasn't just Bobby. It was. I said, when is this ever going to change?
Yeah, right.
And of course, it's only gotten worse.
Yeah, it has gotten worse.
It's only gotten worse.
Yeah, okay.
You know, we had 12 people killed 2 days before the taping of this program, and it barely made the news. Who cares? You know, just another 12 people killed in America, in the NRA's America. At any rate. Go back to the 90s, I realized the country that I grew up in, the country that gloried in its scientific achievements, going to the moon, the Salk vaccine, the Green Revolution, all these things, was now suddenly being taken over by people who denied science, who insisted on who put religion in the schools and in the government. And I thought, what the hell's going on? So I decided to look into it. Somebody put me on the mailing list for Pique, and there was a notice in one of the issues. I was getting it, and I figured, okay, fine. And I even joined the organization, Secular Humanist Society, and I was getting it. It was interesting, and I was fine. And then I read that there was going to be a lecture at the 92nd Street Y
major
by Edwin O. Wilson.
Consilience.
On consilience, exactly. And meanwhile, some of the people, some of these secular humanists were going to meet for a lunch at a bar nearby. I figured, okay, that sounds good. I went over and I walked in, and there was a table in the middle of the room with these gray beards sitting around it. And the women had gray hair, and the men had no hair. And I walked over and I said, "Is this the Misfits and Malcontents Marching Society?" And a couple of people frowned, but most of them started to laugh.
Yeah, sure.
And I figured, okay, I'm home.
I'm at the right place.
I'm in the right place.
Yeah.
So I sat down. I started meeting them. I went to the lecture. And I still don't understand consilience, but okay.
Well, it's a comprehensive, scientifically based, particularly insects and things. And he was a major scientist, E.O. Wilson. And there's a movement around that.
I know.
It's a comprehensive, secularly, scientifically based understanding of events.
I understand it, but it's a little bit more than I can handle intellectually. But anyway, I started getting more interested. And I started writing a couple of letters to the editor about various articles that appeared. And then he spoke to me, John Arentz, the then editor of the newsletter, and he said, you know, you can write, so come on, give me more, give me more.
You can write copy,
And then, well, it's in the advertising business. That was my thing.
Absolutely. There's something to be said.
I was a creative director and a copywriter.
Okay, good.
And I've made, as I say, I've made my living my whole life writing.
All right.
It's an iffy business,
I bet,
but it's there's no heavy lifting and there's no standing in the hot sun, so it's not so bad.
Right.
You know, So I started writing a few articles, and then John's eyesight was failing, so he asked me if I would like to start working as a co-editor, which I did. And then a couple of years later, he said, take over. He said, this is too much for my eyes.
So you think your roots of humanism and celebrating science and secular humanism and that sort of thing go back to your early years?
Oh, yeah,
and so
yeah,
you were
oh, yeah,
like that
oh,
from,
yeah.
okay. I
no
think,
question about it.
I think that
No question
applies
about
to
it.
a good swath of what is called the intellectual community, it
Oh, yeah.
seems to me, and it's growing.
Yeah.
Around the world, I think.
Oh, I think so,
As
too.
the scientific process shows good results
Right,
and so
no
forth.
question about it.
Yeah.
As I've written, when you cannot, the Muslim fundamentalists, for instance, in the Near East and the Far East, in the long run, they're doomed. I mean, when an engineer sits at a computer, a Muslim engineer sits at a computer and works with the latest technology, it's got to influence the way he thinks.
Yeah,
it
yeah.
must.
Uh-huh.
And the same thing with the Hindu, just as with a Jew or a Catholic or a Protestant or a Baha'i or anything else. You got to sit there and say, wait a minute. The world wasn't created, on the back of a turtle, or it wasn't done in 6 days, or people didn't come from the dust by having some hall monitor in the sky breathe life into the dust. It didn't happen because
the creation stories that
science. It doesn't have to destroy religion. It has to put it in its own place.
Well,
it
okay,
has to, and people say to me, well, you're interested in getting rid of religion. Nobody's going to get rid of religion.
No.
People are always going to want, but let's not have Stone Age or Iron Age thinking permeate
characteristic of the current moment,
and determine the decisions we're making in the 21st century. That's the point.
Yeah.
I grew up, as I said, here in New York City. In the 9th grade, I learned about evolution. Not because it was some big deal. It was a normal part of
education.
High school freshman biology. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
You just were taught evolution. Today, 60 years later, it's controversial. Nonsense. Nonsense. 100 years ago, President Woodrow Wilson said, I cannot conceive of an educated man not understanding, didn't say believing, not understanding the process of evolution.
Yeah.
And today, we have these rabid loonies running around, like Representative Brune in Georgia, who you may have seen the YouTube video that was going around a month or two ago. Him standing, he's a medical doctor, and he was addressing a group in his home district and saying, I have learned that everything they taught me in medical school is lies from the pit of hell about evolution, about the Big Bang, about,
what do you think it is that motivates that kind of an attitude? Does it come from political discontent? Does it come from a sense of alienation with the seeming direction of an increasingly secularized, godless society and they have a basis of ethics that they have based upon these creation stories and these religious systems that was essential in a certain sense to human consciousness at a certain point when you didn't have the accumulated intellectual understanding. Think back before Periclean Greece, or back into, you could go back 100,000 years when we were wandering around with our self-reflective conscious ability to ask questions that we simply had no way of having the answer to in any what would be called scientific terms. So it's a liaison with the historical pattern that did answer some sort of a need in the human consciousness that had evolved.
Right. And as long as we have not got answers for everything, there are always people who are going, and I'm fine. What, as we used to say in the 60s, whatever gets you through the night.
Yeah,
You know,
right.
if you want to believe that, fine, go ahead. Just don't try to force my grandchildren to learn that nonsense
Or don't have it
in
affect
school.
policy.
Yeah, okay. A part of it is, you're right, there's the alienation that the world is getting away from me.
Right.
I had simple answers when I was a kid.
Right.
And now everything is complicated, and I want to go back there.
Right.
To some golden age that never was in the first place.
You can understand it in a certain sense as the default position for confusion and alienation in terms of an order. Yeah.
Right. And you get these simple answers, and then there are things. There's certain things. One of the things about the scientific attitude and the humanist attitude, the rationalist attitude, is to always doubt. Is to always ask the question, what if I'm wrong?
Right.
What if I believe right now is wrong? And keep looking at it.
One is advised to have such a careful attitude toward things, intellectual or otherwise.
Yeah,
right.
But there are a whole lot of people, and we all have it to one degree or another. We assume things.
Open-mindedness, it's called.
For instance, yes, yes. But we all are closed-minded about this, that, or the other thing, and there are some people to a much greater degree.
Yeah.
They, for instance, how can you be good if you don't believe in God? How can you possibly be good if you don't believe in God? Well, from the humanist perspective, it's the wrong question. It's absolutely the wrong question. Because you're telling me that people are only good if someone's watching them and will punish them? Or from the humanist,
or reward them.
Yeah,
punishment and reward.
From the humanist perspective, isn't it actually a lot more worthy of us as human beings to believe that we're good for the sake of being good? That we don't take advantage.
We don't have a top sergeant ready to, or somebody like chasing John Valjean around.
Right.
Yeah.
Or as I always refer to it, it's the hall monitor in the sky. The guy, the one who says, "Keep in line," and don't, no talking in line.
And yet, when you think about it just abstractly and everything like that, the world and the social structures and the things that revolve and inform or influence a life and so forth, the principle of reward and punishment operates very strongly even in secular institutions and so forth, does it not?
Yes, it does.
So that's something that idea is inculcated educationally in people, to listen to authority figures and all of that. It's built in not only to the religious order, but to the order of the structural secular world as well.
It's the way the world works.
We were talking about the army the other day. It's pretty authoritarian on the whole,
Yes.
Yeah.
But I just had a thought went right in and out of my head. Sorry, gone.
It'll come back. It'll come back. Yeah. But
the whole concept of being a decent person, not because you're afraid of going to hell or because you want to go to heaven, but because that's what's. Oh, I know.
Okay, good. It came back. You see?
It came back.
Hooray! Hallelujah!
It's going again. Really, it did just go again.
Recorded here for posterity, ladies and gentlemen.
Right. I'm reminded of a supposedly true anecdote. I never saw it, but I read about it one time. There was a debate, somewhat like what we're having. This is not a debate, but a rabbi and a fundamentalist Christian, and they were talking about the rabbi was a humanist, and the fundamentalist was saying people, without God you cannot possibly be good. And the rabbi said to him, "Do you mean to say that if there was proof that there was no God, that you would cheat on your wife?" And the guy said, "Yeah, I might." And the rabbi said, "Well, I wouldn't." He said, "Why not?" He said, because I love my wife.
Right.
Okay? And that's what it's really about.
Yeah.
The person who says we can only be
Reward
good
and punishment. Yeah.
if it's rewards and punishment.
Yeah.
And it's the person who says, wait a minute, we understand it. The same are 10 commandments and the precepts of Buddhism and the strictures that come out of the Quran. They're all the same.
Yeah.
Don't kill, don't cheat, don't lie, don't, and all the rest
Also,
of it. It's all the same.
Incidentally, they all seem, just a little sidebar, they all seem to say, let us be sure that we maybe first and foremost take care of the least among us, and that's been routinely ignored by the political process that people can repair to. You understand?
I do.
Yeah. So there's reason for skepticism for the whole ball of wax in a certain sense. Yeah.
My point about the whole, all these strictures being the same in each of the religions, it shows that the religions are immaterial in terms of human decency and goodness. It's part of what we are.
Yeah.
It is basically, and that's what humanism believes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Now about the authoritarianism. Part of our evolutionary makeup is a response to authority. We respond to authority, and it's big part of the reason why the species exists and why it has persisted. We are, of all the primates, maybe of all the living creatures in the world, we have the longest development process. We are born absolutely helpless. And we cannot fend for ourselves for years. We can't.
That's
a
true.
3-year-old cannot last,
yeah.
and most 7-year-olds could not last. But
there are 40-years that have a hard time.
We're still working on it, right? But that's the point.
Yeah.
Children who have respond to their parents.
Yeah.
The parent says to the kid, don't go down to the water. The crocodile will get you.
Yeah.
And the kid doesn't. And he hears the story about the kid who did go, and the crocodile got him. And the kid learns bit by bit by responding to authority. So authority has its place in our development. There's no question.
Or
strictures
or ethical bases do usually are.
But we, at the same time that we are developing physically to the point where we can stand on our own 2 feet physically and take care of ourselves, we are developing intellectually to the point where we can stand on our own 2 intellectual
feet. And does that
feet.
hold collectively for the whole human society in the evolutionary process? Perhaps we're coming to a moment of enlightenment that has never been characteristic of historical time in terms of intellectual understanding of what it's all about.
I hope so.
It would seem that we might be at that.
Hope so.
I think we're going to do a program with Isaac Asimov earlier in this week. We did a long time ago, and he said this is the defining. He tried to make the point. This period that we happen to be born into, and I guess as we understand it, for whatever it's worth, Homo sapien appeared in the evolutionary process about 200,000 years ago in Africa, 10,000 generations. He made the point in the program we did with him. This is, and he put it in the word "the." Defining generation. Now that's a pretty awesome thing to think about, 10,000 generations, and that this one would be the defining one in some existential, ontologic, new pattern that could maybe only be relating to, let's say, not just a political change or something that's characteristic of history, but that almost in an evolutionary change, that we may be coming into a new relationship in the universe almost comparable to what is like in punctuated equilibrium, the evolutionary process, a new relationship to the cosmos and that we've been in for 200, like a species, the beginning of a chrysalis or the beginning of a new relationship in the universe, like comparable to speciation, something like that.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
I think about that, first of all, before I answer that, let me tell you, Isaac Asimov was the first honorary member of the Secular Humanist Society in New York in 1988. The
Wonderful guy.
The next
Wonderful man.
I only met him once to shake his hand, and that was before I was even in. But it had to do with advertising. And the second one was Kurt Vonnegut.
Yeah. Oh, Kurt Vonnegut was another great guy.
Terrific.
Yeah.
People, picking up on what you said, there exists an almost science fiction kind of feeling among some people that maybe we are the intelligence of the universe, that the universe has exploded from its initial Big Bang. But it is formless. It is neutral in terms. There is no ought in the universe. There is no yes and no. There is no right or wrong in the universe. Maybe we're it.
Yeah.
Maybe we, and maybe some other civilizations.
Or by certain criteria, we might be the leading edge of it. In certain criteria, it depends on your criteria.
Maybe life itself is the brain of the universe. Maybe that's a little bit, Yeah,
but we could have lived in the 6th century, and there would be no way we could be thinking the way we are now. So we ought to be a little bit easy, perhaps, on the angst that's being felt. And a lot of those things that the people that are repairing to the good old-time religion sort of thing, and that you can understand it in a certain kind of way, because we do live in an extraordinary time. That probably people in the 6th century thought this is an extraordinary time.
Sure.
Maybe they have. I don't know. It's hard to. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I do understand.
Also, one thing you had in one of your Pique, I don't know if there's this one or not. Forgive me. I read them all, and I really thank you for it. Everything. But you had various classes of atheists, right? You had an agnostic atheist, and you had chapter and verse.
It was not me. I was reprinting someone else's.
You were reporting that. Maybe I wonder if we could talk about. We're talking about you've got people who are called agnostic. They don't know. You got people who are not sure. You have people, because in a certain sense, atheist could be seen as a absolutist kind of principle. That you understand what I'm saying?
I certainly
Maybe it'd be worth talking, if you can recall that article. People who question the creation stories or the beliefs that have cohered the wisdom schools through a long period of human history and so forth, the trends in terms of now that science is coming into a new flowering, the Enlightenment and all the rest that followed and that kind of thing, put it all in perspective about having a secular intellectual understanding of things as opposed to the creation stories that did give solace to people to answer that larger question. Then the advancement of being able to extend consciousness and make the world different through tools and technology is another characteristic of our species that is now coming into creating a world that is qualitatively different perhaps than we were born into as a species. I mean, but maybe you could that grouping of people who are on the side of a scientific versus creationist
the woman
view.
who wrote that article that I stole. She divided. She postulated
and had figures and
she had figures.
Surveys.
I don't know where she gets those from.
Oh, okay.
But I'll go along with her.
Yeah.
She had 6 categories of atheists, and she threw agnostics in there as the number 4 or number 5. And if you're agnostic, you're not an atheist. So I don't know why should that. But first is she spoke about the.
I thought the largest
intellectual
was intellectual. Okay, go ahead.
But not an activist.
Okay.
Then the second, that someone who has come to the conclusion and said, "I don't believe in it," and that's that, and then but is not active. The second one was intellectual atheists who are active, and I realized when I wrote, well, that's me. I mean, I'm in class number 2. I forget. I don't have the order right. But then there's the ones who go beyond activism, who want to take down the churches, who want to argue with people, who want to fight. That's a very, very small. She said something like 4% of them. Again, I don't know where she gets these numbers. if you interview 15 people, you can, and then you start talking percentages. This is nuts. But anyway, and then
that's part of the validation part of the scientific process that ought to be adhered to with these kind of things that we present. But this was just I thought it was that the agnostic atheist, and maybe you said it was the intellectual atheist.
If you're an agnostic, that means you haven't made up your mind.
Yeah.
If you're an atheist, it says you have made up your mind. She says the seeker agnostic.
You happen to have it. Yeah.
I happen. It's in the current
the
September
current
issue.
one. That's how I happen to remember it so well.
And the anti-theists, they like to argue about religion, but they're more aggressive about it and actively seek out religious people in an effort to disabuse them of their beliefs. And then there's the non-theist, what I call before, up at the beginning of the show, the apatheist. Doesn't care. Go away, don't bother me with that garbage. And then she pointed out one that I was really, this one I didn't understand it, so she wrote it, and this is true. The ritual atheist or / agnostic, by which she means the people who don't believe in any kind of supernatural, but they believe they get satisfaction, comfort out of the rituals in which they've grown up, out of the community.
Yeah, right, okay.
This is particularly true among Jews. And as a matter of fact, there is a whole movement called Humanist Judaism, Humanistic Judaism.
Yeah, we did a program yesterday. With,
3 or 4 of my closest friends in the world.
That would be Martin Buber and Magnus, Judas Magnus, and there's a whole, right. Or we have Reverend Joseph Ben David in New York.
3 or 4 of my closest friends in the world are not only in Secular Humanist Society of New York, and not only do I know that they don't believe in any supernaturalism, but they are also members of a synagogue.
Community. Yeah, sure.
And they volunteer for soup kitchens and everything. They're good people.
They do good work.
They're good people
that's right.
who don't believe in God.
Yeah.
But they get a sense of community out of what it, and that I understand. And
does that apply as well to the Christian, Lutheran, or Episcopalian, or
there's now there are now even some groups who call themselves evangelical humanists.
Okay,
not the wrong way around. Humanist evangelicals, because they are evangelical Christians, but they're also humanists. And there's now humanistic Mormonism.
Really?
Which to me makes absolutely no sense, but okay. All right.
Yeah.
This, by the way, these ritual, what did she call? Ritual atheists or ritual agnostics. As she points out, these are the people that the fundamentalists worry about the most. They don't worry about me writing my newsletter and publishing my book, or excuse me, or the people who are actively shouting, down with religion. They don't worry about them. They're worried about these people, the people who get a sense of community. As she says, they're worried. They're in our churches. They're in our synagogues. They're in our mosques. And we got to be worried about them. Yes, right. They're going to infect the rest of us.
Yeah, right.
So that's a funny bit. So okay.
But
but you asked, and that's who they are.
That's where the secular trend is on the march, as it were, as we move through time. Don't you think? I mean, the Enlightenment came, and so it goes like that. Yeah. And it's the force of the moment, more or less, and everything, and it's moving in that direction. But the idea of a non-absolutist thing, like an atheist, let me ask you that. If you're an atheist, then that's got a certain kind of absolutist quality that there should be up on the table, along with all the creation stories and so forth, or the other explanations of the universe, including quantum mechanics or whatever, all these other things, there should be up on the table of consideration that there is the possibility of understanding everything without having an overarching notion such as a creator or God that created it, an intellect that created it, but that it just grew out of its own being. And that should be on the table, given equal consideration to the intellectual advancement of understanding things as is characteristic of the time in which we live now, particularly in an advanced kind of way, it seems to me. Like a maturation process or something.
That's a very good way to put it, a maturation process. I agree with that one,
And where is it heading?
Increased secularization is only going to go so far, as I've said before. There is always the need to get through the night. There is always, and as the British philosopher Roger Scruton wrote, the consolation of imaginary things is not imaginary consolation.
That's interesting.
Isn't that a good one?
Yeah.
The consolation that you get from the belief that my dear departed mother is in heaven. You can say,
that's a fairy tale.
At noon, in the bright sunshine, I know that's a lot of crap. But at 2 o'clock in the morning, I'd like to believe that my mother is up there with Jesus. Okay, it's the consolation of imaginary things, and consolation. And it's not imaginary.
Afterlife, heaven, these kind of things are things that one can understand.
Right.
In terms of a projection of that kind of a feeling.
But what you said about, you prefaced your last remarks there with this about, in certain sense, atheism is itself
an absolutist.
Absolutism.
Yeah.
Richard Dawkins.
Yeah, Richard Dawkins.
The closest thing we have to a pope.
Yeah. Bill Maher, maybe.
Dawkins laid it out. He said that, think of it in terms of a linear thing.
Time.
Right in the middle. No. You have from 1 to 7. And 1 is the guy who's pounding down, says, absolutely there is a God, and absolutely it is the God of the Bible or the Quran or whatever, and shut up, because that's a fact. And then you have 2 and 3. You have 2. I believe, and this is what works for me in my life. Blah blah blah. You get the same thing. You get a little shading. You get to number 4, and it's the agnostic right in the middle. I don't know. I really don't know. You go all the way over to the other end, and you get to number 7, and this is what you call the atheist, who is an absolutist, and it says there's absolutely no God. Even Dawkins himself said he's number 6, and so am I. That means I know it, but of course I can't prove it. Of course I can't. So I don't believe in a God, small g. I don't believe in it, but I can't prove it, because that's nonsense. If I was over there yelling, there is no God, I'd be as bad as that guy who's yelling that, we all have to bend down and kiss the Bible. No.
Well, yeah.
It's stupid.
Okay, so it's not absolutist then, in your view.
Some people are.
Okay, that's the distinction between the kinds of atheists that you have, right?
Right. That's
what that woman is making that distinction. Yeah.
Right.
So it leaves room for
plenty of room.
The uncertainty principle and other things.
A very small percentage of atheists are absolutists who say absolutely, and this
is it
scientific
important for people who are calling themselves atheists to make that distinction about what kind of an atheist they are or not?
Most people don't. No.
They don't?
No, I don't think so.
But are they going to be tarred and feathered for the thinking that comes from the other people of the society when they see it that way? Can you understand what I mean?
Yes.
It's a PR thing. It's an advertising thing or something in a certain sense. Maybe that distinction or that opening upon uncertainty or synergy or something like that would be something intellectually pleasing to people that might be able to come around to think that way, that are put off by the absolutist notion that is contained in the thinking of many people toward that idea of the word atheist.
Right.
It's
a lot of people are afraid of the word atheist. Yeah, there's no question about that. They're afraid of the word atheist.
Yeah, well, only that they're afraid of absolutism itself in all its forms. Yeah,
they're afraid that they're going to get struck by lightning.
Well, no, I'm thinking of the intellectual community now.
Yeah, in the intellectual community, there are people who are they're put off by it. Because they very rightly say
they better be in scientific terms because you've got to keep an opening upon
right. They're absolutely right.
And secularism can take the brunt of that kind of a criticism as well.
Yes. But the problem with people who are afraid of the word atheist is that they make the mistake of thinking that all atheists are that same way, or are absolute.
Well, that's why I was wondering if there ought to be a distinction made or something, or some sort of a new word. What did you call that?
I don't know. Yeah. You see,
or you understand what I'm getting.
How about secular humanist?
Well, okay, secular humanist seems to be something that's.
We had our monthly brunch on Sunday, and we had 18 people around a big table, long table, and we were talking about this very thing about what kind of atheist are you? And some of them are not atheists. Some of the people in our organization are agnostics, whatnot. And there was a conversation. I said, "Now wait a minute. One of the things she does not mention is the so-called militant atheist. Now that you've heard that phrase.
Well, I
have. It's around militant atheist. Well, militant atheist is a pejorative that is thrown out by the religious right and by the Gingriches and the other loonies, and what they really mean is that somebody says, you can't spend my taxpayer money to put up a Christmas thing in the courthouse, okay, or the post, and they call that militant atheism. When somebody is just there's a difference.
Yeah.
I said, does anybody here consider the 18 people there? I said, does anybody here consider themselves a militant atheist? And they all I said, by the way, okay, show of hands.
Yeah.
How many of you have knocked on somebody's door on Saturday morning to bring them the no news about atheism?
Right.
And of course nobody raised their hand. Do we call evangelicals militants? Do we call people who publicly profess their belief? Do we call them militant? No, we don't. Well, we call them evangelicals.
Well, you had another term, activist. That's an activist.
Militant.
Policy.
Doesn't militant sound terrible?
It does. Yeah, it does to me.
That's why it's used.
Yeah. A lot of this has got to do with propaganda and people's belief systems and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm not a militant. I was admonished once by my sister, who believes the same things I do. She said, in her summer house in North Carolina, she said, when we go over there, don't bring up religion. I said, but I don't. I'm not the one who does. It's, in North Carolina, you say, hello, yes, nice to meet you, Sam. I'm John. And I'm glad to meet you, John. What church do you go to? Well, first thing out of their mouth.
Well, some people say you should never talk about religion or politics. That leaves an awful lot to. You can talk about the dog or something. You can talk about the church as a social or something. But that involves a lot. You shouldn't. A lot of people take exception to the idea of an intellectual, or even people who do think about things.
Oh yeah.
And the number of people who are just becoming aware, and then also the communications are making available knowledge about things that are, let's say, intellectual, increasingly, so that a person can be educated very quickly. Advertising, about media, visualization of things that could be done. Right. They had a program on the History Channel the other day, History of the World, in 2 hours.
Yeah.
And they put ads into it and everything. You take them out, and you can go and check. It begins with the Big Bang and that kind of thing, and the very serious, and then you can check like markers in DNA. You can check the validity in terms of scientific understanding of that. And if you had a translation to the languages of the world, you could be educating anybody, a child, to the highest levels of intellectual understanding without even having any book involved or any reading. It could be just, you can pass on information, and they could have quality access to the highest understanding of intellectual understanding of what the realities are, which is becoming more and more new things are being discovered every day. And you could have an educational thing where people would very quickly become educated rather than having to relate to the stories that have cohered society through history. I mean, again, back to that idea, this is a defining moment. It's not just a normal period in the evolution of human society. Right. I mean, I don't know if that seems to me to be something that is characteristic
I'd like to think so. I really would like to think so, but I really don't know that we're getting any smarter or getting to know it or putting our greater knowledge to use, to fruitful use or not. I don't know. I'd like to think so.
Yeah, there's a lot of alienation in the world about the inadequacies, let's just say, of the political class or the institutional structures that are, after all, we reify things we reestablish things out of history. I mean, the architecture, the institutions, the structure of the city, the structure of things are reified. And it's very hard to get to a new order of things in a qualitative way because we're very used to and built into and have a conditioned response to the system that has been.
Yeah.
You know, it's very hard to get
But are we changing? Yeah.
In a large way.
Yeah, we are. Well, we're changing in a very large way.
Yeah.
You're familiar with Steven Pinker's book, The Better Angels of Our Nature?
Not as well as I should be, yeah.
Read it. It is one of the most important books you can ever read. Believe me.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, well, not important. Never mind that one.
Yeah.
But Pinker's whole point is that while we think that we're living in the most violent time, if you look at the headlines, and if we those of us of our age are familiar with a world war that killed 60 or 80 million people or whatever, and it was, and the war here, the war there, the war the other thing. We know more about those things now. But Pinker points out we are living in a time where we are less likely to be killed by violence. You and I and the people outside in the control room and the people walking on the street are less likely to be killed by violence than at any other time in human history.
Is that right?
Yeah. Now, proportionally.
By
now,
violence.
By violence. We're talking about all those peaceful societies that we suppose that people who live close to nature and everything else, when they dig up these graves,
they've got awful diseases.
Holes in their head. Literally.
You mean violence,
they
man upon
violence,
man.
Violence.
Not from just creatures, but from other fellow men.
And in the still primitive societies that we're trying to keep our hands off around the world today, in New Guinea and in the Amazon rainforest and all. These people kill each other out of all proportion to what is going on. Now, if the World War II toll,
that's very interesting.
If the World War II toll was projected back to, let's say, the time of Christ, that would have been terrible. But at the time of Christ, there were only 100 million people in the world.
I guess that's true. Yeah.
But the point being, proportionally and as a percentage, we are living in the most peaceful time in terms of individual health. And it's not just statistics. Look at what's going on. You said 6th century. Let's take 16th century. 16th century, popular entertainment included torturing animals.
Right.
We had executions where they devised executions for people who stole a loaf of bread. That they outdid each other in terms of how long they could make the person suffer and die. Okay. In the so-called back closer to nature societies, the Plains Indians of North America, had raiding parties where to capture people from another tribe just so that they could torture them. This was part of their development. This is we have
nature
come
is red
a
in
long
truth.
way.
Yeah, we have, and also nature.
We don't do slavery anymore in most of the world.
Right.
Women are gradually becoming emancipated. They have legal rights, which they did not as recently as 100 years ago. Was that part of
positivism, or a positivism seeing evolving in process, that there is things are getting better?
You said is
nature
secularism.
Red is not all buttercups and butterflies.
No, it's not.
Red in tooth and claw.
Yes, it is.
And everything's eating everything else.
Right. Yes. But we were the only ones who. Well, maybe that's not true, but not many species killed or tortured for fun, and we did for a long time.
Cats might do it with a mouse.
It's still going on a little bit, but not all that much. But slavery is gone. Chattel, women as chattel is disappearing. The rights of children now are being recognized.
Even the rights of animals are being recognized.
Even the rights of animals are being recognized.
Thank God for PETA, right?
Right.
Okay. It's right there.
Obviously, 300 or 400 years from now, no one's going to eat meat.
Well, maybe. That's right.
Maybe. Yeah. But that's what I'm saying. We're changing.
Well, wait a minute. Does that mean that we are not going to eat meat? Are we going to then eat the vegetables that we're going to have because they are of a lesser order? So we're going to eat the pawns and not the bishops on the chessboard?
That's about right.
You understand what I'm saying?
That's about right. Yeah. Right.
But one of the things that might be said, one of the things that's positive about this time is that we actually may be coming to a time. It's really hard to people get their mind around. We may become, first of all, on one vector, right? The way in which the political system and the social system largely have been established in terms of historical legitimacy has been through the ability of one group to have greater military capability to coerce or conquer or influence or co-opt another in order to make their tribe strong against the others, called realpolitik.
Right.
And those weapon systems have, according to some modeling, become species lethal along about 1970. That is, the weapons that exist at that level of dysfunction, if it would come to that, it would have nothing to do with rationality or anything, we could wipe out our entire species, apparently. Now, that's something that should be up on the table. That should be part of the curriculum of understanding the human condition, and rather than it's too grim to think about, but there'd be a few survivors or whatever rationale there is. But that's a vector of capability of extended consciousness.
Right.
The other side of it, there's modeling that says, Fuller and others have said, that we are gaining in the percentage of the world population that can be realistically seen through good design and through ephemeralization, doing more with less, with efficiency and all of these kind of things, the percentage of the world population that can reasonably be seen to be halves. Cervantes had said there are only two classes in the world, haves and have-nots. The question of what does it mean to be a have should be seriously up on the table rather than just assumed to be ipso facto unanswerable, because there's no way that you can ever have a situation where what does it mean to be a have, because it's so nuanced. You have to be, you're not a have until you have a swimming pool full of diamonds or some sort of absolute. That should be up on the table. And if you do that, there are things that the percentage of the world population that can be real in a materialistic way, and a materialistic understanding of things, that the percentage of the world population that is able to be seen within realistic terms and studied seriously and brought into the picture of the percentage has increased dramatically and sufficiently. And in Fuller's reckoning, you got to the point where we reached and crossed the 50% mark around 1970, the same time the weapons became species. We may be transcending material scarcity as an ontologic, much less a political or design principle by which we can assume the structure of our institutional structures by which society is set up. There is enough. Rather, there has always been scarcity as an ontologic reality. Right. We may be transcending that, and it never is mentioned, or it never comes up. We may have this transcended scarcity, and if there is enough, those implications of what they've been fighting over is, for me to win, you have to lose. That's been the assumption. And that may be that we're coming to a time of transcending that. It's never mentioned in any of the things. And if there's any hope for that to get up on the table, it would be through the scientific and the intellectual understanding of things, rather than reifying the outdated institutions of our tribe strong, your tribe weak, and the fighting that's gone on over that. If you understand, I don't know, that's just a rambling kind of thought.
But an interesting one.
Well, it's one that's worthy to put up on the table somewhere, it seems to me.
Yes,
and above that, we ought to mention, too, listen, we're coming to the end, John, believe it or not. And what we want to let them know about, you're having an event about your book, right? And again, let me show the book, and you let the folks know about the event. It's going to be.
I appreciate that very much.
Come in on the book, and you tell us when the event is, John, okay?
Well, 2 days, 2 days after this program will air on Thursday, September 26th from 7 to 10 p.m. They're not in, there we go. At Cellar 58, an Italian restaurant and bar at 58 2nd Avenue, which is between 3rd and 4th Street. We're having a book launch and a signing and a wine social. And as I've written here in the newsletter, come celebrate the publication of my first book. It's a collection of a decade's worth of my essays and amusements and outrageous rants. Things like, with articles like An Atheist Christmas or Ronald McDonald and Touchdown Jesus.
You have really good scientific writing, and you have a well-honed sense of humor, which really
I have most
helps.
fun with the humor. So the book launch and wine social
Give
is
it again.
free.
Give the address.
58 2nd Avenue between
date?
3rd and 4th Street, Cellar 58, on Thursday, September 26th from 7 to 10. And the party is free and open to all. But as I write, but put something on the bar besides your elbow.
But, yeah.
You remember that
now,
old
one
song?
more time. The date is the 26th. Is that it?
Date is the 26th from 7 to 10
That's
p.m.
what day is that?
A Thursday.
Thursday
Evening from 7 to 10.
7 o'clock. And it's where?
At Cellar 58, which is at 58 2nd Avenue between 3rd and 4th Streets. And everyone is invited and welcome. And come and have some fun, meet some fellow rationalists and
answer
humanists.
Some of these conundrums.
Maybe even you buy a book.
Okay, yes, and come and answer some of these conundrums we tried to raise here. Thanks a lot for such
Delighted to be here.
well-led life, really good. We got a lot we could talk about. Your pleasure and perception, John Rafferty, the president of the Secular Humanist Society of New York, and author of this new book that is very well written and very intellectually interesting and very funny, if I want to say.
Thank you.
And thanks a lot for coming in, John. Thank you for viewing. We'll be coming back again.
My pleasure.
We'll be coming back again with conversations tomorrow. Once again, John, so good talking to you, and we'll see you again tomorrow in the audience. Thank you. So they could put up your graphic, and I think we're just about in now. And let's see if I hope they put up your graphic, I think. So I'd like to get to that. I'd like to get to that event, John.
I hope you do.
We could have stuck it up here, but we didn't know it. But that's...
I didn't think of it. I should have.
Well, you can't...